Welcome back to the Reier on YouTube channel, where it is time once again for Second Helping, the show of choice for fans and followers of the number one league in all of collegiate athletics, the Southeastern Conference. Travis Reier alongside my great friend and co-host, Mr. Brent Beaird. And of course, it's a Monday night. We are live here on Reier on YouTube. Chino,
Yes.
making his cameo as he tends to do, the show mascot. Brent, what would be
Yeah.
the start of a second helping episode without our pal Chino there?
Well, I can tell you this. He was laying on the bed in the other bedroom, and basically, I won't say comatose, but close. And as soon as he heard your voice, he gets energy unhad all day long. How about
Yeah,
that?
yeah, he likes company, Chino
He
does,
does, don't he?
even of the
Yeah.
virtual digital kind. So
Yeah.
we got a lot to get into, Brent, because we got
Yes.
sort of this confluence that we enjoy every time at this time of the year. When you get to the stretch run, you get into
Mhm.
March, it's officially March Madness. You get into the start of spring football around the Southeastern Conference. So no shortage of topics for us on a Monday night. And of course, we always appreciate our viewers checking in here as we go live on Reier on YouTube. Brent, we'll start with hoops, where my last check of Joe
Mhm.
Lunardi of ESPN.com had no fewer than 13 SEC teams
Yeah.
in his latest bracketology. Now, some things may have changed over the last 3 or 4
Mhm.
days, but I don't
Mhm.
know. I think it was more maybe impactful what we saw over the weekend, where the top of the pecking order is concerned. Not so much Kentucky, who absolutely rolled Kentucky,
Yeah.
Auburn, who rolled Kentucky in Rupp and is solidified as the number one seed for the upcoming SEC tournament in Nashville. But you get into Florida, you get into Alabama, Tennessee with that win over Alabama over the weekend, even Missouri sitting there kind of lurking. And that's important because we're still talking
Yes.
about those double buys there for the first couple of rounds.
Mhm. Yeah, well, we really are. And it's incredible how these teams are bunched together. I mean, Auburn obviously is the overall top seed. And then you've got kind of a threesome here of Alabama, Tennessee, and Florida, and how that will shake out over the next week is going to be interesting because Alabama's played Tennessee. They're about to play Florida, and that will be interesting. And then Trav again. Aren't these Tuesday, Wednesday night games really important
Big
for Georgia, South Carolina, LSU at Kentucky, Texas at Mississippi State, Auburn at A&M, and boy, if they want to wake up and break their losing streak, this would be a great time for A&M to do that. And then Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Ole Miss. So, we know, Trav, we know basically where the Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, Floridas are going to go. To me, the real intrigue right now, is it not, would be kind of these middle of the pack teams scratching and clawing for all they can get right now.
Absolutely. And what a turnaround for Vanderbilt as well. Missouri, as you said, Missouri 0-18 in SEC play
Yeah,
last year.
yeah, that's
With
right.
Dennis Gates, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster ride, but you like
Yes,
where you're at with it right now if you're a
sure.
Mizzou fan, and what they've been able to do in Como this season, and sitting there at 10-6 in the league. Chris Beaird at Ole Miss, you figure, going to be solid year in and year out. That is, unless he heads for somewhere like Indiana
Yeah.
this offseason. But A&M, losers of four straight, as you alluded to, not the time of the year that you want to be going through
Mhm.
that. And even Alabama, when you talk about the teams in the top 3 or 4 right now, we knew that this was going to be a situation for Nate Oates' team where the bill would come due down the stretch in
Yeah.
terms of schedule and things ramping up. And that's why for Alabama, that loss at Tennessee on Saturday stings as much as it did, because you do have Florida, even though that game's in Tuscaloosa on Wednesday night. That's not going to be
Yeah.
an easy
No.
task at all. Then you go to Auburn. I guess if there's a saving grace or there's some comfort for you as an Alabama fan right now, it's that Auburn's got the thing wrapped up.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean Auburn obviously doesn't want to head into SEC tournament play. with continued momentum, and especially if it comes at the sacrifice of the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Yeah.
So still some things to sort out here in the next 4 or 5 days. What a basketball season it has been in the Southeastern Conference. And again, really other than LSU
Mm-hmm.
and South Carolina,
Yeah.
just about the rest of the league right now anyway, you can say, hey, there's the possibility
Mm-hmm.
of the rest of the league having a chance to get into the NCAA tournament. And really, when you look at it, Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma got off to such rough
Right.
starts,
Right.
put themselves in the hole. And speaking of the hole, just when you were ready to throw dirt on Georgia, they knock off Florida
Yeah.
at home and now have won a couple in a row. Mike White's team has. So kind of tough to write off any of these teams at this point.
Well, and Georgia's got South Carolina coming up, which you would think they would win that, but we may have a Mike White special, and they get feeling too good about themselves and be upset in that situation. I'm looking at the net here, and I mean, you still got teams, even though they've made some struggles. A&M's 24 in the net, Ole Miss at 28 in the net, Mississippi State, which we haven't talked a whole lot about, is 30, and the aforementioned Georgia's 33. I mean, Trev, frankly, if you're in the top 30, top 35 in the net, you've got a puncher's chance of being able to still go to the dance.
And that's where the league being as strong as it is has some ways maybe hurt teams in the league,
Yeah.
cannibalization
Mm-hmm.
in some ways. But in terms of metrics, having this many good teams, it also can help you in terms of your resume, even if you are maybe like Georgia right now, sitting at 6-10 in the Southeastern Conference. Let me ask you this, Brent, in terms of start of SEC play to this point of the basketball season, conference play only, what team or two would you look at and say, they've made maybe the most improvement since the start of SEC play to this point where we're at right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Trev, I still would have to put Missouri up there.
Oh,
I know they've struggled somewhat, but this Mitchell kid inside,
yeah.
and Grill, who basically gets off the bus shooting threes, has been very impressive. But it appears right now Kentucky A&M and Ole Miss are going in the wrong direction. I still really like Chris Beaird and what they can do on defense. I really wonder about A&M. Have they kind of hit the wall at this point? And then Kentucky's a really good offensive team, but they struggle also defensively during this time. I think we all thought Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee would be where they are. But I'm still really intrigued with what Missouri has done at this point.
Yeah, Auburn at 15-1 in the league, that's a team that's just gotten better
Yeah,
and
they
better
really have, haven't
in
they?
a tough
Mm-hmm.
league. Had the loss earlier in the season at Duke, but it's just been steamrolling people, not just
Yeah.
winning games in the Southeastern Conference, but winning decisively in most instances. So I'd have to have Auburn right there. Missouri, you're right. Another case study and the transfer portal. You,
Yeah.
you bring in a transfer from UNLV, you bring in a transfer from Duke, and then suddenly here you are at 21-8, 18-1 at home,
Yeah.
Missouri this season. And
Yeah. Well,
I don't think Alabama is a team you can write off, but
right.
I don't know how much Alabama's really improved
I agree with that.
throughout
Yeah.
SEC play. Still a really, really good
Yeah.
team, but in a position where now with Florida on Wednesday, Auburn on Saturday, you know, back at the start of SEC play, you'd have said, well, yeah, that's going to be a tough stretch with Tennessee, Florida, Auburn, but you still could envision Alabama winning the home game against Florida, picking off one at least between the road games of Tennessee and Auburn. But right now, Alabama looking like a team that could go 0-3. Now,
Yes.
playing at home Wednesday night, you would think, but this hasn't been an unbeatable team
No.
at Coleman Coliseum.
No.
And
No.
down the
Mm-mm.
stretch, they've gotten off to some slow starts.
Yes.
And if you do that against Walter Clayton and this Florida team on Wednesday night, you could find yourself in another hole like Alabama has in some instances this season.
Yeah. And two quick comments on that. One for Bama. The thing you and I harp on, whether it's football or basketball, Bama's still struggling into March on the little things.
Yeah.
Blocking out at the free throw line. Now, I know that Nate Oates, and he owned this to his credit, he's still a great coach, took out two of his best bigs at the free throw line, missing free throws, the 5-second call, trying to get the ball in bounds. I think the wrong player trying to get it in bounds. Phylon really needs to be on the court shooting it. Maybe Grant Nelson would have been better there, but the little things, the details about this Alabama team, that there are moments, Trav, you think they could go back to the Final Four. There are moments to where they could lose in a Sweet 16 game if they get the wrong matchup. But I tell you that really, to me, besides Missouri, the team that's really come on is Florida.
Yeah.
I think they're the perfect combination. I really don't think Bama's able to beat Florida because the Florida's guard play, you mentioned Clayton, is as good as anybody in the league. To me, the reason Florida is so good are their bigs.
Yeah.
And they're deep.
Versatility of them too.
No doubt. And
They can
Trav,
do it a couple of different ways.
oh yeah. If you can go to Auburn and you could win at Auburn like Florida did,
Yeah.
Trav, you can win anywhere then,
Yeah,
can't you?
you can win in Tuscaloosa if you can win in Auburn. There's no doubt about that. And, it just feels like Florida has known for a long time who they are.
Yes. Agree.
There's no mysteries about
No.
Florida.
Mm-mm.
Whereas Alabama, it's gotten late in the season, and now you're seeing Mark Sears move off the ball more, trying to play Phylon more on the ball, which,
Right.
I think some of the lumps that Alabama's taking with LeBaron and Phylon right now on the ball could end up coming to its benefit when you get a little further into March and you get into the NCAA tournament. I think Alabama can actually be better for some of the catastrophic events from Saturday in Knoxville, because I think Phylon's that type of talent. I think Phylon is extremely dynamic.
Yes.
It's just sometimes he doesn't always have a plan, right? He seems like he can blow by anybody he wants to, but does he have a plan? And so he's still a young player. He's a future pro. There's no doubt about that. But for Alabama, I think Aiden Holloway and LeBaron Phylon are the keys.
I agree.
Because if you're going to stay with Sears off the ball, which is fine, because since they've done that, he's been a machine scoring the basketball. But if you're going to do that, then Phylon and Holloway have to be really good down the stretch. Hattie May checking in here says, all right, here we go. Hattie May, welcome into the program.
Hello, Hattie May.
Monday night. Yeah, absolutely. And so, Brent, it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, you think about the SEC tournament starts a week from Wednesday in Nashville. And again, boy, those double bye spots for the top 4 teams. I know Auburn's one of those. Florida, Alabama, the winner of that game Wednesday night, you'd feel pretty good about in terms of being another one of those.
Yeah.
But you can't count out Missouri. You can't count out Tennessee. And to have a chance to win this tournament, it really feels like you're probably going to need to be one of those 4 teams. But the depth, the quality in this league, a team could get on a heater.
Sure.
And in the second round and end up running their way through it. Well,
Trav, my question is, and even more so maybe for the Missouri's A&M, Ole Miss, and Kentucky, Mississippi State type teams, if they make the tournament with what they have played in the competition this year, which is by far the best league in the country, could, and to your point, could one of these teams, Trav, get hot because of what they have learned about themselves during the regular season in the toughest conference in the country, and maybe what end up getting the Sweet 16 and giving somebody a whole lot of problem as they are trying to reach the Elite Eight?
Well, it all goes back to draw too.
Yeah.
And Alabama a year ago was a perfect example of that. There
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of steam around Alabama
No.
going into last year's tournament, but when that draw came out, forget about seeding.
Yeah.
Think about draw. And when the
Mhm.
draw came out a year ago for Alabama, you kind of looked at that and said, if they get to the 16, even if they see Carolina,
Yeah, absolutely.
that's a good matchup for
Sure.
Alabama. And then beyond the 16 into the 8. And that's exactly the way it played out. And that's
Mhm.
what it's all going to go back to once again. And to your point, I think absolutely with as battle tested as these teams are in this league, if any of these teams get the right sort of layout, the right kind of draw, uh, I could see a 7, 8, 9 seed from the SEC going deep, deep,
Oh,
deep
yeah.
into
Yeah.
the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and Trav, one more thing on Tennessee, the way they can play defense in the tournament, if they can get any offense at all, how dangerous could they be?
Yeah, that's always going to be the question with Tennessee, and that's the
Yes.
biggest concern is that they can defend. Rick Barnes teams are going to defend. They can be a little bit held captive by the whistle.
Yeah.
A lot of it goes because their hands and hips on
Yes.
defense.
Oh, yeah.
They play with their hands and they give you the hips.
Yep.
And if they get the right whistle, in multiple games, they can turn it into rock fights that no one wants to be
Oh,
in with
yeah.
them. And then
Absolutely.
the other side of that too is if they have one of their games where they don't score the
Yeah.
basketball, and
Oh, yeah.
unfortunately with Rick Barnes teams, that
Yes.
has been sort of a thing that has been a problem for them in
Mhm.
the NCAA tournament. Uh, we'll see, but yeah, I mean, if they get the whistles, the right whistles, and they can turn things into rock fights, no doubt Tennessee can go pretty deep in this
And
postseason.
Trev, I'll be really fast on this, but I know you'd appreciate this, but because you understand the history of this guy, does Rick Pitino ever fail to amaze you at what he can do?
I was gonna say, that's the one team
Yeah,
I wouldn't wanna see. Like, you talk about draw, if you're any of
yeah,
these
yeah.
SEC teams, and the draws comes out, you don't want St. John's
No, no, no,
in your bracket. You just
no.
don't. And especially if you're a team that might see them in the 16 or something like that. No, I wouldn't. He was enough of a problem at what, Iona
Oh, yeah,
before he got
yeah,
back to kind
right.
of the premier leagues in college
Mhm.
basketball. No, you don't want to see Rick
No,
and the Johnnies. I
no,
really
no.
don't care who you are. Maybe Auburn, because Auburn right now kind of has a UConn feel from a
Yeah,
year
they
ago.
do.
They
They
kind of have that
truly do.
feel. We'll see how they handle that.
Mhm.
Obviously, a year ago it didn't go so good, but a different team and a team that is just playing uh, elite basketball right now. Hey, Brent, let's switch it over to some college football because
Mhm.
we have spring football in the air. Um, Teams getting underway. We know Alabama got underway today in Tuscaloosa. We heard from Kalen DeBoer post practice. Sounds like the Crimson Tide, like a lot of teams in the SEC. I guess what we really need to do is find out who's practicing
Yeah,
from a
right.
injury perspective, because
Mhm.
DeBoer, for example, today talking about the litany of guys who are either out altogether this spring or limited, guys like Caden Proctor, guys like Deontay Lawson,
Mhm.
guys like Keon Sabb. Not huge surprises because these are guys that back during the 2024 season had pretty significant injuries, but it's kind of a reminder of you are going to have some missing pieces as you go through these 15 practices.
Well, and I'll tell you one thing, if they can be able to get a few days with Isaiah Horton of Miami,
Yeah.
And Hill Green, the linebacker out of Colorado, who I hear just absolutely off the charts. Cameron Calhoun at Utah. I tell you, Trav, a spring practice with guys like that could be rather exciting for Alabama fans.
Yeah, and that's kind of the other side of this too is you do get to really enhance the development or the discovery phase with some of those guys like Horton coming in from Miami at the wide receiver position. You mentioned the additions on defense for a team like Alabama. So there is that. Unfortunately, I'm of the belief that a guy like Caden Proctor needs every practice,
Yeah,
every opportunity
absolutely.
he can get. I know he's been a 2-year starter for
Mm-hmm.
Alabama, but he's really got some ground to cover. Now, the hope is that physically he's able to do some things that will
Mm-hmm.
help him, at least from that standpoint, even if he isn't able to take many reps on the practice field. But, we've talked about this before in terms of the big picture for spring football and spring games around the Southeastern Conference. Looks like that weekend of April the 12th is going to be a
Yes.
busy one. About half
Yes.
the league is
Mm-hmm.
going to conduct some
Mm-hmm.
semblance of a spring football game. We did hear from DeBoer today, just from the Alabama perspective, that they're going to probably do something similar to what they did a year ago, or that's the plan.
Yeah.
But again, when you're limited by injuries,
Mm-hmm.
you got to hope you get through these next 13, 14
Oh
practices
yeah.
in good shape, or that could change how you go about that 15th practice as well.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And look, all eyes, and we say this almost every year, but boy, particularly this year, we're going to be on that quarterback situation to see how accurate those guys are. I think that's going to be very important, and the poise that they've got. And Bama's like so many teams. I think they've got a really good core. I think this team could really be good next year, frankly. But spring will help them with the guys who can play, and particularly and Trav, how big? And I know you're limited in what you can do, but how big are those 15 days going to be for a guy like Ty Simpson?
Huge. You bring in Keelan Russell, the 5-star freshman,
Yeah.
so that certainly adds some intrigue to that quarterback competition. You wonder at some point, is he just too good to
Yeah.
keep off the field? But
Right.
when we've seen Ty Simpson, there's been reason to believe
Yeah.
that he can certainly handle that
Mhm.
sort of job, even at a
Right.
place like Alabama. And now you've got Ryan Williams coming back as a sophomore. You got
Mhm.
Jeremy Bernard coming back for
Yeah.
another year. As you said, you add Horton. You're trying to get some other guys healthy at the wide receiver position for Alabama. Jalen Mbakwe, it looks like, has made that
Yes.
full-time transition from corner to offense.
Mhm.
So, yeah, in terms of personnel around the quarterback at Alabama, there's a lot of reasons to be encouraged defensively. You've got some guys out, as we talked about, for the spring, most notably at safety, probably more so, and then also corner a little bit in that regard too with Damani Jackson. A couple inside linebackers and Lawson and Justin Jefferson out, but kind of know what you got at those positions. And so you feel like you're going to be okay on the defensive side. I agree. I think personnel, you look at this Alabama team and think, if you're looking at early Vegas odds for next season's national
Mhm.
champion, probably can get as good a value on Alabama
Yeah.
in
Absolutely.
March right now than you've been able to for probably 15 or
Mhm.
20 years.
Oh yeah, and Trav, how about this coaching staff? A lot of interest, no doubt, on Ryan Grubb coming back and being the offensive coordinator. The offensive line is one of the units that they've got to make, I think, an impression and certainly improvement. Appreciate Nick Sheridan being a good soldier in some ways with this. He is now the co-offensive coordinator and the quarterbacks coach. And Kane Womack and what he's got with this defensive staff is going to be interesting. So I think this staff working together, and I'm curious what you have. They've had a really good offseason so far for preparing the players for the spring. I think that's going to be fascinating too.
Yeah. My thing with Alabama after 9-4 last season, though, with Kalen DeBoer in year one, is show me
Yeah,
in year
no
two.
doubt. No
I
doubt.
agree. The names, the paper, the personnel, all that says, yeah, this should be a team that certainly is college football playoff caliber in
Hmm.
2025. But that schedule, as we know, it
Yeah,
flips and it's
yeah,
not going to be easy. So
no,
you still have to go out and do it. The pieces, absolutely, I think they're there. And I'm not down on Kalen DeBoer as a coach. I just, I'm kind of the more, you know, Missouri show me
yeah. I
state
think that's
type of
fair.
viewpoint
And
with
Trev,
Alabama in year
and
two.
particularly with games where they're favored
Yeah.
in double digits, i.e., Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, in some of those struggles. Those are things they've got to get behind them.
It's not hard to be the head coach at Alabama when it's Tennessee on the other sideline
Yeah,
or Auburn on
yeah,
the other sideline, or those type of games. The hardest time to be the head coach at Alabama is when it's Vanderbilt over
yeah,
there
yeah.
or
Absolutely.
Kentucky. And as Kalen DeBoer found out last year,
Hmm.
when you don't take care of business in the games where you absolutely should take care of business
Yeah,
against 6-6 football teams,
absolutely.
those are the ones that
Hmm.
come back to haunt you the most. You kind of mentioned about coaching staff and things like that, but we continue to see movement within the league too at the
Yes,
assistant
yes.
level is and some pretty big hits from a positional perspective with I know you've got LSU in mind from that regard.
Yeah, yeah. Bo Davis surprised a lot of people in leaving LSU and going to the Saints. Been in Alabama, Texas, LSU, as Travis mentioned. That I think surprised a lot of folks. I mean, you can get it when you have a chance to go to the NFL. You take that, but Davis so well thought of, frankly, and Trav. There's a lot of disappointment in this. I've heard from LSU beat writers who really thought that he would come in there and do what he's done before on a real position of need for LSU to see improvement with that defensive line. It's not saying that won't happen again, but Bo Davis is special with that defensive line in a lot of people's minds.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, Bo, both as a position coach and a recruiter,
Yeah,
uh, at the top of the heap in college football for a long time. But we talked about this in the past too, with how the game has changed with NIL, with the transfer portal. Hey, good for Bo Davis. I'd
yeah,
get out of I'd
oh,
go to the NFL too. And I
yeah,
think what's telling is, there had been a stretch where it didn't seem like as much anyway that position coaches wouldn't leave programs like LSU for an NFL team that is in total rebuild mode.
yeah,
I mean, the
absolutely.
Saints are bad and the
Yeah,
Saints are going to be bad,
right.
right? So, maybe you would see a guy like Bo Davis
Hmm.
leave an LSU or an Alabama or a Texas
Hmm.
for, say, the Chiefs
Yeah,
or
yeah,
the Rams or something. But you didn't see him leaving for NFL teams that are got a long ways to go.
no,
And so
no,
I think we've seen more of that, and that's not a surprise given the current environment, the current landscape of college football. And I've said it many, many times. I can't blame any of them
no.
that
Well,
made
yeah,
that move because there's just no structure to college football
no,
right now.
no, no,
You don't know day to day kind of what
no.
you're going to get.
No, and again, when we've got the $20 million per school that's about to drop, and Trev, this needs to be said too. It wasn't an issue of money.
Right.
I mean, Bo is basically
Oh,
for the highest paid position coach in the nation.
yeah.
And Trev, I'm sure as as they do with NIL with a lot of these players in the SEC, they would have padded Bo Davis's pay too, I believe.
Yeah. Again, he didn't leave for the Chiefs.
Yep.
He didn't leave for the
Yep.
Eagles. I know he's a Louisiana guy, so New Orleans, but come on.
Yeah.
And it makes it hard for Brian Kelly too, because there's already, it seems like,
Yes.
an eroding,
Yes.
rapidly eroding
Hmm.
perception of him by that fan base.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you
Absolutely.
lose a favorite sort of son type,
Yeah.
not just a really good position coach, but sort of a beloved guy
Hmm.
amongst LSU
Hmm.
people in Bo Davis. That just, it feels like almost an accelerant
Yeah.
to perhaps,
Yeah. Yeah.
what could be coming for Brian Kelly in the next year or so.
Yeah, and they start spring practice March the 8th. Now, I'll give 24/7 Sports credit for this. As far as some names they've thrown out, Southern Cal's Eric Henderson.
Any would be good there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he would be. Missouri defensive line coach Al Davis, and that Missouri defensive staff has been rather good. Blake Baker came from over there. Not nothing definitive yet on this, but again, Trav, when when you've got coaches leaving during March and spring practice, I'm not saying you can't get people, but it makes it a lot harder.
Henderson leaving Southern Cal would be brutal for
Yeah.
Lincoln Riley, because
Yes.
Henny went in there and kind of reestablished Southern California as a legitimate recruiting program,
Mhm.
not just in terms
Mhm.
of positional value, because he came from the NFL. He coached Aaron Donald. I
Yeah.
mean, he was the defensive
Yeah.
line coach for the Los Angeles Rams and went to
Mhm.
SC. That would be brutal for Lincoln Riley, if in a multitude of ways, if Henderson, and if I'm an LSU fan, I feel a lot better if I
Yeah.
if I make that
Oh,
kind of
oh,
hire.
absolutely.
I'm able to pull that off. But
Yeah.
Brent, also, of course, we wanted to talk about the situation involving Hugh Freeze at Auburn,
Yes.
the health status of the Auburn head coach. Uh, Very serious matter, as we know. Hopefully, it sounds like it's a situation that should play itself out in a very positive fashion. But well, you never like to hear that word mentioned with anyone.
I'll tell you what, and I've got two friends that who have had prostate cancer, and they went through there's like radioactive seeds that can be implanted. And I won't get very very deep into that, but it worked for them, and certainly really grateful that they found it and able to be able to deal with that. But I mean, and look, I think they'll be better. I'm not sure they're going to be better quarterback like some people think they are. I don't think Jackson Arnold is necessarily a star. Now I know that they're going to be good at wide receiver. To me, that what they need to do and had to do is bring in a couple of tackles, and they were able to do that. So, but look, Trav, I mean, man, you know good and well how tough it is to coach in this league as we've covered it for so many decades. Trav, you throw something like that on top of it too. I'm not saying Freeze can't deal with it because that I'm sure they've got good physicians and doctors at Auburn and wherever he's going to get it treated. But man, that makes it doubly tougher to do what you need to do every day, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, on a much more secondary level where the football is concerned, yeah, with where that program is and where they're trying to get to. Jackson Arnold, if he is, let's say, Jared Stidham
Yeah,
going back a
yeah.
ways, is that
Uh,
enough? Or does he need to be more
Good
than
point.
a Jared Stidham? Because 2017 Auburn was pretty damn good with
Yep,
Jared Stidham,
yep, they
but
were.
lost in the SEC championship game to Georgia, which, uh, as we know, Alabama went on to make the playoff and actually win the national championship that year after losing to Jared Stidham
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and the Auburn Tigers. That's what I kind of go back to with Jackson Arnold. I think maybe he can be Jared Stidham like,
Mhm.
um, but it seemed like that team, 7, 8 years ago had a little bit more around the quarterback than
Yeah.
maybe this Auburn team's going to have.
Mhm.
Although, as we know, at wide receiver, uh, yeah, Jackson Arnold's going to have a lot more to work with at receiver than he did at Oklahoma last
Oh
season.
yeah, boy, that, and then they bring in Eric Singleton from Georgia Tech,
who's a thrill a
who would,
minute.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, and but I'll tell you what, Trev, intriguing opener that we'll get into later. Going to Baylor to start the season, and they really don't need to go out there and stumble around and come back with an L.
No, they don't. They absolutely don't want to do that. Speaking of Baylor, it's full circle with the Jared Stidham comp.
That's right.
Jared Stidham from Baylor to the Auburn Tigers, man.
Yeah.
We just tying it all together here on
Mhm.
second helping on a Monday night. Brent, anything else before we get out of here?
I'm intrigued by a couple of things at Florida, and curious what you thought of the Bubba Spurrier hire.
Bubba coming home.
Yeah. Now, Tram, I'm trying to read.
You know who likes that? Jerry.
Hey, no doubt about that.
The biggest fan of that whole deal has got to be Jerry. Bubba is coming home, the grandkids, all those things. Heck yeah. That's great for the Spurriers.
Yeah. I'm Trav. Does he start as obviously as an analyst? And I'm not trying to project stuff here, but if that works out and he makes any changes, could Bubba be on the field with them in
maybe
2026? Maybe.
Yeah, the thing about Bubba is he's never really been a coordinator.
Yeah.
Or at least at a high level. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Given the pedigree, you would have thought Bubba would have been an OC at a Power 5 program years ago. It just never really happened. Obviously, a pretty good position coach, maybe as a positional guy. That I guess Bubba's in his early 50s, so he's not too mossy as of yet. But it's I think as much as anything, it's a good hire for the Spurrier family. Again, another avenue to get all the people back together. Crescent Beach is right across the way there. They like to spend a lot of time there. So good for the Spurriers on that one. Also, though, Brent, I wanted to ask you about this ACC stuff over the last few days in terms of how that might eventually impact the SEC, or if it will.
And that's going to be interesting to see. That there will be a vote on Tuesday that would do away with the lawsuits. And folks know that Florida State Clemson sued the ACC and vice versa. All that's supposed to go away. And what they've basically done here is they have finally decided, after a lot of billable hours here, that they're going to give Clemson and Florida State a bigger percentage of the pie. This is one thing they've wanted for quite a while. Their argument has been, look, we've got the TV ratings when we have kind of been the bell cows here, and we deserve some of this. Also, my understanding is, Trav, Miami, this very little said about this, but Miami and North Carolina are going to have a bigger piece of the pie. And I just wonder, as our buddy Greg Larson would say, the late great Greg Larson, was this move the financial incentive? I'm sure that didn't hurt bringing Belichick over to North Carolina, Trev, knowing they would have a little bit more money to deal with.
Well, and the hoops, obviously, as you alluded to, and just look at this weekend coming up. I mean, College Game Day is going to be in Chapel Hill.
Oh yeah.
Carolina's terrible. But it's still Carolina Duke.
Right. That's right. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But still, and I'll end on this, Trav, that my understanding is, and I talked to a source at FSU throughout this, and that was one of the number one thing he said was they wanted a bigger piece of the pie. But the other thing he said was they eventually want out of the league. And they would like to be in a different league, SEC, Big Ten, maybe in 20. But now the thing that's really key here is after like 2030 to get out of the ACC, Trav, is a whole lot cheaper than it would be now. So I think we have to take that into account too.
Yeah, there's athletic departments like FSU that are trying every avenue possible to get out of that deal and out of that league.
Yeah, yeah,
Because at the end of the day, they just can't write the check.
that right,
I
right.
mean, so that's kind of where it sits with Florida State and some of the other athletic departments out there. Hey, Brent, as always, a lot of fun with you here on a Monday night. Second helping right here on the Reier on YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to our channel as of yet, hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell. That way you're alerted to all of our content as it drops here on Reier on YouTube. And if you'd hit us with the thumbs up, we'd appreciate that as well. Brent, send us on our way, my friend.
Trav, thanks much. We appreciate folks listening and watching. And listen, in this a great time of year into the SEC for basketball, SEC tournament, then the NCAA tournament, spring football. Different teams start almost either every day or every other day among the league. So it's a fun time of year, is it not?
It is. You got SEC baseball, SEC softball.
Yeah.
Boy, this expanded league with Oklahoma and Texas, there's no gaps in terms of the impact that those two continue to make on SEC athletics. For Brent Beaird, Travis Reier, thanking you once again for joining us right here on Second Helping. And until next time, so long, everybody.